Community service. What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Well, I know that you all are thinking the same thing that I am. Balloon animals, clearly. Well, I didn't expect it, but my journey with service has been driven forward by balloons, and at its core, joy. When I was 12 years old, I started really thinking about my education system, the inequities in it, and my place in it all. I knew that I wanted to see a world where everyone had the resources to find a love of learning, seek out new opportunities, and dream big. I heard my teachers talking about how they had to buy school supplies for their students out of pocket, and staff across my school and region told me that backpacks were a very persistent need. Today, 90% of US educators end up buying school supplies out of pocket. I didn't know what to do with this information, but I decided to start with what I knew. So I emailed my city, showed up at a couple of community events with a little booth and a fundraiser for some backpacks, and I brought my balloon animals. I'd been making balloons for a few years at that point. I loved the little moments of joy that they sparked, the silly conversations, and I soon found that it became a method of building relationships and ultimately taking action. Today, I serve as the founder and executive director of Realize to Act, an education opportunity nonprofit working to close the resource gap in schools. We deliver thousands of educational resources to students across our communities every year, and we work with schools and community partners to close the resource gap by ensuring that students have a consistent pathway to accessing the resources that they need, and we empower young people to build out these solutions in their own communities. Every balloon animal we make funds backpacks filled with school supplies, and it's become this truly reciprocal relationship between every level of community. Community members find a spark of joy through the balloon animals, which makes the backpacks possible, which then students find a spark of joy as they pick out their favorite color backpack and get excited for the school year. And volunteers find a spark of joy as they make balloons, build community, and continue this cycle. It really is this reciprocal relationship brought together by every part of our community, and at its core, joy. When I first started Realize to Act 7 years ago, I never imagined the support or the pathways we would have found to continue doing this work, and we found that joy is at the center of sparking action. Joyful service connects us back to the reason we serve, to build strong communities. We have to think past our traditional definitions of service, from a transactional mindset toward one where we center joy and use joy as a method of sparking positive action. So, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about service in our communities today? We often start with this idea of going out into another community, perhaps at a school or a food bank, doing service for a couple of hours and then leaving. We divide the world into categories: the affluent community, the low-income community, the community that needs help, the community that gives help. My community versus your community. This framing creates a giver and recipient mindset where there's a hierarchy between communities, between people. But we're all part of one community. We've all been givers and recipients of service, whether that's cooking a meal for someone who's sick or being handed a warm meal when you couldn't cook for yourself, helping a friend move into a new apartment, or being helped by a friend when your car broke down, helping plant a community garden, and being able to cook a meal with the fresh produce you grew. We show up for others with our time, and we're carried forward by the people who show up for us. Our world is shaped by these small, reciprocal acts of service. And yet, we've built a bureaucracy around it. It's limiting to put service in a box and tell ourselves that only certain types of service count. A few years ago, I was thinking about joining a service-focused student group. Service hours were a requirement, but I was told that my work didn't count, that because there weren't adults structurally supervising me, it wasn't verifiable. I was even told that if I get the beneficiaries of the service, like kindergarteners, to sign off that they receive backpacks, then the service would count. It likens service to checking off a box, adding a line to a resume. Students are supposed to go out into another community, do service for a few hours, and then leave. We tell students that they don't have a voice in defining what service looks like for them and in their communities, and it reinforces this idea that service is only worth it when it looks a certain way. I still speak with students who only see service as real if it exists under the purview of a 501c3 nonprofit. But nonprofits really are only a tax structure. They don't make the work any more or less real. It also takes a tremendous amount of work to put together some of the things we see as traditional service opportunities. I know firsthand that a backpacks and school supplies packing event that's just a couple of hours long already took our team many, many hours of not very glamorous logistical planning. It's incredible to see what's possible when community members show up and volunteer, and it's critical to our communities and the work. But we have to remember to ask, who can afford to volunteer unpaid? Who gets funding for this work? Who holds the power in this infrastructure? Too often, we put on our metaphorical service jackets, go volunteer for a few hours and celebrate that good feeling of service, and then come back home and be done with service. But service isn't just a jacket you can wear for a few hours and hang on a coat rack when you're done. It's not a jacket at all, rather an integral part of the way we function as a society with our everyday interactions and relationships with each other. Think of the little things, a smile, a kind conversation, showing up for someone in a small way. These form the basis of our community. It's amazing to see what's possible when we do use little moments like this to bring service together and joy and community. And let's call this joyful service. Joyful service isn't about ignoring the harder realities, but about confronting them honestly. Joyful service supports not only the mission, but the people and systems that sustain it long term. Because if we truly believe that we're all part of one community, then care must extend to everyone, even those doing the caring. And today, joyful service is needed more than ever before. UNICEF reported that roughly 60% of young people report feeling overwhelmed by the news. There's so much going on in the world today, and it's easy to feel like we can't do anything, that these problems are too big for us to face. Especially as a young person trying to navigate the social impact space, I know what it's like to be told that I'm not qualified to tackle the big, scary issues of the world. I'm always fighting to prove myself, to be taken seriously. I quickly learned how to tie a tie, how to format a business card, how to balance the request of mentorship and collaboration as to not overstep. After all, how can a student like me truly understand a system that I'm in? The complexities of the education system that's guided by our policies and economy that scholars study and leaders build solutions toward. How can I possibly navigate a system dominated by the bureaucracy of quantifying impact, tax structures, donor relations, grant applications, and everything? In the face of this, it's easier to step back and shrink away because it feels like we can't do anything. We step into what we do in our own lives, in our own little bubbles. But that's exactly the mindset that helps us understand how to address these problems. Change starts from the small actions we take within our communities. I've probably made thousands of balloon animals at this point. I even walk around with balloons in my backpack in case it's someone's birthday or someone just needs a balloon animal. And over time, these small actions built into something tangible, into volunteers and school supplies and kids that are gonna start the school year with their favorite color backpack. And now we have a pathway to creating a systemic solution to close the resource gap in schools for good. In short, service can start anywhere. And I want to restate this message for everyone, especially for young people like me. We can start where we're at with the problems around us. We just need adults and mentors and community members to show up as collaborators, co-equal learners committed to acknowledging and reducing the power dynamics inherent in these conversations. Co-creation of service opportunities repositions educators' roles as not only definers of service, but as facilitators of the environments and opportunities in which students can discover their passions and connect authentically to service, empowering them to build out and define what service looks like to them and in their own lives. So now, what steps can we take to integrate joy into our approaches with service and our everyday lives? Let's start with our society. Our institutions have incredible power in shaping how we view service and integrate it into our approaches with our lives, from K through 12 to higher education to even the press and the government. Higher education institutions greatly impact how students view service as an accessible, practical part of their everyday lives. I recently co-authored research with students and practitioners of service on the impact, accessibility, and opportunity of service on college campuses. When institutions define service in a particular way, without room for students to evolve that definition, it falls into a box that students can't adapt to as their lives change and community needs change. Service isn't only going out of our campus communities to serve a particular population. Instead, we can broaden from a transactional definition to one where it can exist within our campuses, within the communities that we're members of. Service can be research, advocacy, internships, everyday acts of kindness. There's many forms of service, and spaces where students can define what these service opportunities look like to them, build a student community who can truly integrate service into their lives and the mindset of the institution. The media then shapes how we view service more broadly. A 2020 study published in the International Journal of Voluntary and Nonprofit Organizations found that nonprofit activities are only reported in a small portion of news coverage, rarely highlighting nonprofit innovation or new approaches to service, and usually framing nonprofit activities as little snapshots of service, rather than a thematic core part of the community with sustained coverage. Nonprofits get more coverage when working with business or government partners, but they can only benefit so much from that momentary positive glow. When we think about innovation for social good, we then tend to think about the big philanthropists with billions of dollars, instead of the everyday people who carry service forward. Volunteering, nonprofit work, philanthropy, everyday acts of kindness, they don't have to be one-time stories, obligations, or even driven forward by people with incredible amounts of money. We are all part of sewing the fabric of society through our little joyful actions that serve our communities. And ultimately, the government defines how bureaucracy is intertwined with service. It's our basis of a definition of a nonprofit. It comes in the form of tax structures, tax write-offs, incentives and disincentives to spark positive action. Yet, service doesn't have to exist as a nonprofit. It can, but we need to see government structures as a tool to help facilitate service rather than a checklist of forms to legitimize it. With all of this, what can we do today? We need to start by loosening our transactional mindset and productivity mindset with service, from hours volunteered and items donated, and bringing ourselves back to the relationships we build, the joy we can create. Service takes a place in so many parts of our lives, and it's not always easy to quantify the long-term ripple effects that service has on changing our lives and communities. Joy and fulfillment are central pieces of service, because showing up for our communities brings us closer together and helps us find purpose and meaning. Every 2 years, the Census Bureau and AmeriCorps conduct a study on civic engagement and volunteering in the US. And interestingly, they look at both formal volunteering, like going to a food bank or another nonprofit, and informal volunteering, like mowing a neighbor's lawn or helping buy them groceries. 137.5 million Americans helped their neighbors informally over the course of a year. You have probably served your communities in many different ways already, both big and small, and recognizing the impact and then taking that next step to intentionally show up with joy and connection is powerful. This week, I want to challenge you to intentionally spark a moment of joy. It can look like checking in with a friend who hasn't shown up for a while, picking up groceries for someone who you know needs them, or intentionally finding out someone's birthday and helping make them feel special. You can even start by making a balloon animal. And as we take these steps to engage in service, connect with our communities, build stronger, less transactional relationships, and spark joy, we maximize our impact on our communities. Because service, showing up for each other, starts with a little spark of joy. Thank you.